Welcome back to First Look. It's time for our interview this morning, our main interview on information segment. This morning, as we did yesterday, we're dealing with issues on agriculture. Now, it is World Food Safety Day, but today we're talking about food security and food sovereignty as we take a closer look at a soil analysis project that's ongoing currently in Barbuda. It was launched on Monday. It will get to Antigua in a few days, but we're speaking now to the IICA specialist, the International Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture specialist right here in this country, Craig Thomas. He joins us via Zoom this morning. A little later in the morning, we'll hear from the Director of Agriculture, Mr. Gregory Bailey. But Mr. Thomas, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you doing? Good morning to your viewing public and listening public, also those who are on the World Wide Web.
All right. Thanks so much. We're doing well. Thanks for joining us. We know you're under the weather, but we appreciate the sacrifice this morning. Happy you're able to speak with us. Let's start by looking at the soil. It's the soil project itself. I know you're an agricultural specialist, and of course you would have done extensive work in Barbuda as well. We will get to that. But how important is it to look at the soil, particularly when we're talking about issues of food security?
Well, first and foremost, the soil project. IICA is just a supporting institution trying to help the ministry with that project. We're not really the implementing agency. But when it comes to soil, it's very important to plant growth. We're looking at all the living organisms that help the plants to grow. Barbuda in particular, as you know, it's basically limestone. And so I think for this particular project, it will basically help us to zoom in and look at what are the specific properties of the soils in Barbuda and what are the types of crops that will strive best in those soil types.
Now, as we look at the whole issue of food security and IICA's involvement generally, you know, the 25 by 25 mandate that's been put on CARICOM, of course, reducing imports, agricultural imports into our countries by 2025. It's less than a year and a half away now when you really look at it. Talk to us about all the projects that IICA has been involved in Antigua, Barbuda, and then we can, I guess, hone in specifically on the Barbuda, the island of Barbuda.
Well, pre-Hurricane Irma, we started to do some work in Barbuda. And then post-Hurricane Irma, we saw the potential of Barbuda. Hence the reason why we kind of stepped up our game in doing work in Barbuda. We would have helped with the rehabilitation of the agricultural sector, where we worked with all the farmers in Barbuda, trying to get them back on their feet after that devastating storm. And after that, we continue to work with different groups. One of the things that we have been preaching in Barbuda is that we want the producers to work together as a group. Most recently, we just worked with the Bee Foundation, where we supported a group of women to start a community farm, a community garden. I was recently in Barbuda the other day, and suffice to say that these ladies has harvested a number of produce. Again, they've had some challenges, and you mentioned soils and water. That is another issue that they've been having. But those group of ladies have been working well, and they have been doing well in terms of producing food for the community. We have been working with the beekeepers, Mr. Mussington, Mr. O'Brien, and some younger beekeepers in Barbuda, where we are working with the Antigua and Barbuda Beekeepers Co-op, trying to get more young people into beekeeping. So we just completed one project where we were able to raise about 46 queens, new queens out of Barbuda, to help increase the population of colonies in Barbuda. And also we are now working on another project where we know Barbuda don't have what you call the varroa mite. But we have this project where we're trying to test the viral load to find out the varroa mite situation, not only in Barbuda, but in Antigua. So we're working on those two particular projects. And most recently, we were approached by the Barbuda Go. That's a new group that is doing more environmental work in Barbuda, where they're trying to preserve the wobbler. That's that indigenous bird that they have over there, and also to preserve other environmental areas within Barbuda. So we have been working with different groups, and most naturally, once we're doing work in Barbuda, the council, we support the council. The council supports us in getting these projects off the ground.
From the, and I would call it the outside looking in, Mr. Thomas, it would seem that there's lots of available land for agricultural development on Barbuda, not a lot of land used for residential development. I know you mentioned the issue of water, but what's been retarding the progress of Barbuda to really produce what it could potentially produce from an agricultural perspective?
I'm glad you asked that. You asked that question, because we always think Barbuda doesn't have a water issue problem. They don't have water problems in Barbuda. They have a water quality problem. And when I say that, I mean that Barbuda has a lot of water. The problem with the water, it is very saline. Because of the water table, the high water table that they have, you basically dig a well and you meet water. The issue is that water is very saline, and when you apply that to agricultural producers, it basically affects them in the long run. So we have to look at different ways, innovative technology ways, to try and see how we can get that water as fresh as possible. Those ladies that I spoke about, they're not really agriculturists, but they were able to tell me that, look, when we apply the water from the government system to these plants, we see a difference in terms of the size, the growth, even the appearance. But whenever we use the water that we capture from the rain, the plants basically grow, looks better, grow better. So that is the issue in Barbuda. I think we're gonna have to look more deeply into, okay, yes, we have the reverse osmosis. That is one way of providing water. But for agricultural produce, it affects the plants in the land, because the water at the end of the day is still saline.
So an RO plant, yes, perhaps. What other innovative technologies that you would have mentioned could potentially solve that situation? Because as in the question I asked, there is land, yes, but if there is no water to irrigate, it doesn't really make sense. Are you familiar with any of the innovative technologies that could be introduced, and perhaps how IICA can assist in that situation?
Basically, I think more of these RO plants with filtration system. These wells that are being dug, I think one of the issues that they face in Barbuda is that they don't allow it to replenish. I think once you allow it to replenish so that the water can become fresh, less saline, that can be a way of reducing the salinity. But I think more for the filtration system, again, we know that rain fall, but whenever it falls, we tend to harvest that water. So I think to encourage Barbudans to harvest the water, encourage Barbudans to buy these black tanks, 1,000 gallons, 800 gallons, and you can use those to gravity feed or even use them as a pump system. But I think those are some of the ways that you can, those are some of the innovative ways you can implement to help to reduce the saline water that you're applying to your crops. But again, given the situation and nature of Barbuda, I think more of a filtration system, a better filtration system, is something that they would have to use to help to cut down the saline content in the water.
Any crops potentially that could do well, could flourish in either very dry conditions or conditions where they only have availability of brackish water? I know there may be certain crops that would do well, even without a lot of water.
Well, based on what I've observed in Barbuda, cucurbits, you're talking about pumpkin, melon, cucumbers, they tend to do very, very well over in Barbuda. We know peanuts. I think that is something that the government needs to look at very seriously. The local peanut in Barbuda does very, very well with the soil conditions over there and even the water condition over there. Those are two commodities. And what I realized also, coconuts. As you know, Barbuda had a 250 acres coconut wharf that was destroyed during Hurricane Irma. But coconuts tend to do very, very well. And given the situation in the Caribbean with the leaf-tailed yellowing, and that leaf-tailed yellowing is non-existent in Barbuda, that is another investment I think the government needs to look into in terms of repopulating the coconut wharf in Barbuda And you can basically add another value chain to the coconut in terms of we can start to export and we can start to make products from coconut, because the little yellow hen is not in Barbuda. It is in Antigua, it is in the other parts of the Caribbean. But those are commodities I think the government needs to focus on. And a wide variety of beans. That is something that they do. Looking at the livestock section, small ruminants does very, very well. The bees, and I think Barbudans need to be innovative enough in terms of now looking at aquaponics. Aquaponics, I know when Mr. Musselton was the principal at St. McChesney George, they had a project with a group out of Canada where they were experimenting with the aquaponics, and the aquaponics basically did very, very well in Barbuda. So those are some of the areas I think that they need to look at to help to push the agriculture sector in Barbuda.
Okay, I'm no expert here. What about poultry? Could that be an option? I know we've talked about in Antigua and Barbuda importing lots of poultry. Could that be something that's looked into?
And you're an agriculturist, I believe you're an agriculturist also, but that is another commodity that does very, very well. As I said, I was there a couple of weeks ago, and I visited a young lady who is doing broilers, and I asked her, is it profitable for you? She said, Craig, it is profitable for me because PLH takes all the meat from her. She produces and PLH takes all the meat. The issue that she's having is that persons don't want to do the work. That is the issue. So poultry does very, very well. The eggs does very, very well. I know the school had a vibrant program pre Hurricane Irma, and I think that is another commodity area that they can basically look at. Because at the end of the day, you realize Barbuda is opening, PLH is there, and you have more persons living in Barbuda. So instead of you have to be purchasing from Antigua, which is at a cost, you can basically produce those commodities in Barbuda and have them sold right there in Barbuda, and the money basically will circulate within the island.
Yeah, it makes a good multiplier effect. They could even export, quote unquote, to Antigua as well, because we have a shortage here. That could work as well.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Thomas, thanks so much. That's all the time we have for this morning, but really appreciate your effort to be with us. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and continue to do the good work that you do.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, great. Mr. Craig Thomas there. He is the International Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture. That's the IICA National Specialist right here in Antigua, Barbuda.